All statements and opinions expressed by guests of the Adult in the Room podcast are strictly their own and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or opinions of the host, producers, or advertisers. All interviews are presented in their most complete possible form in the interests of free speech. No statements should be interpreted as financial, legal, or medical advice. Listener and viewer discretion are strongly advised.
It's the Adult in the Room podcast with Victoria Taft. That's me. One of the guys I wanted to talk to today is Keith Gross. He is a former National Guardsman, so it's very appropriate that we can meld together the situation at the Pentagon and with Pete Hegseth giving that speech at Quantico today, and what's going on in Portland, too. He can speak to both things. Did you get that water down? Keith Gross is a former...
Just in time.
I really appreciate it. He's written the book, Dirt Roads to Runways, Defending the American Dream for the Next Generation. I have your book somewhere, and I'll put it up when I can find my photo of it. And, well, what do you make of what Pete Hegseth had to say today?
Well, it's clear that he wanted to sort of change the direction of culture. You know, it seems like, a lot of folks call it woke culture, but in short, it seems like our military was getting kind of soft. And he says, enough of that. Even you generals, you're going to start doing a PT test.
What did you think of that? What do you say? I hate, no fat generals. Let me just put that out there. It was way too funny.
I thought it was about time, I mean, look, no one in reality expects generals to go out and be on the front lines, being the first rifleman and, leading the charge. But, it is a bad message to the troops you lead. If you're out of shape, if you don't take the thing seriously that you're telling the troops, then you lose credibility. But I'll tell you,
to look out at combat formations or really any formation.
This is where he says no fat generals.
Fat troops. Likewise, it's completely unacceptable to see fat generals and admirals in the halls of the Pentagon and leading commands around the country and the world. It's a bad look. It is bad, and it's not who we are. So whether you're an airborne ranger or a chairborne ranger, a brand new private or a 4-star general, you need to meet the height and weight standards and pass your PT test. And as the chairman said, yes, there is no PT test. But today, at my direction, every member of the Joint Force at every rank is required to take a PT test twice a year, as well as meet height and weight requirements twice a year.
They don't have to do PT?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, it is.
That's not how it's supposed to work. I mean, when I was in, I often thought it was really, really dumb that the women in the unit were required to do a different physical fitness assessment than the men. Like, to pass as a male, you had to do, say, 70 push-ups within 2 minutes, but to pass as a female, you only had to do like 26. Well, that's fine. And I get why there are differences biologically. Men can do more push-ups than women most of the time. Mm-hmm. But the reality of the physical fitness test that the Army does is to make sure you're capable of pulling your fellow soldiers out of the line of fire in battle. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. You got to be able to pull your battle buddy out of the line of fire. So expecting some of the troops to hold a different standard, it's always seemed very illogical to me.
I mean, I just remember just recently one of the officials, executives on the LA Fire Department said a large woman who's a lesbian, and so she was the first of everything. He said, we don't mind firsts, but they better be the best, is what he said today. So no extra points for just being a particular gender or color. And what this woman said was, she's supposed to be able to pull people out of fires. And she said, well, if they got themselves there, I'm not going to help them. Words to that effect.
Well,
after the LA fires, she said this. It's like, whoa, are you nuts? Yeah. So example number one, I've got it on video somewhere. I'm sure I have it. Just insane. It's absolutely insane. What else did you think of what he had to say today?
I just thought it was generally a resetting of expectations, just making it clear that Trump's priorities are going to be pushed through from the top down at the Pentagon. This is not just an administration coming in and letting the Pentagon sort of behave independently, they are going to conform to the president's expectations. So I like that. It's good that they're changing things, because I don't think our military was necessarily headed in the right direction culturally. It's a good change.
No dudes in dresses.
Right.
I mean, that's all combat arms positions will use the highest male standards. All combat arms units will implement combat field test. They will take part in physical fitness. They have to complete a height and weight assessment. Beards are banned. He banned the beards unless you're in special forces. You can't have one unless there's a religious exemption for the Nordic pagans or Sikhs.
What's a Nordic pagan? Is that a Viking?
I think it is.
That basically sounds like a Viking.
I think that's what he meant. Anyway, so I mean, I was watching a couple of different takes of the speech, and I felt like there were a lot of people who were applauding it. The people on The View, not so much, but
they don't like anything. We're not surprised.
No, I'm glad to be able to speak to somebody who's actually been in the military and in the National Guard. What do you guys do in the National Guard? They're really having a moment, kvetching at this point in Portland, Oregon, where the 200 National Guard troops are going to be deployed around and near the ICE headquarters near downtown Portland. And there was a huge effort by city and state leaders not to have them come, because we're fine. We've got this handled. Yesterday was the first time I saw, or maybe it was the day before yesterday, was the first time I saw Portland police do anything with any of the protesters in months. I mean, all of a sudden, President Trump's talking about coming in. Portland Police Bureau sends a few guys down there, and then it doesn't take long until they find somebody breaking the law. And then they arrested them or took them away or whatever it is they do before they let them go and allow them to come back and do it again. And so what do you do?
Well, the National Guard generally acts as a supplemental force. The Army National Guard plugs into the Army on requests or on orders, I suppose, from the president. So generally speaking, the National Guard is under the authority of the state governor. And so they're often used, in Florida, for example, they'll come out and help with hurricanes or other natural disasters. So you have that sort of thing. You have any sort of emergency supplemental force, any of those needs generally met at the state level. When the federal government activates the National Guard, it just becomes part of the regular Army for practical purposes. So, during Iraq and Afghanistan, National Guard units were deployed just like everyone else, in the Army for 18 months to 2 years at a time. So it's just an extension of the Army. When not on active duty, the National Guard's much more of a part-time thing, 2 weekends a month and 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks a year. That's generally the cadence, where you go and you do a drill weekend once a month. And then once per year, you go for a 2 week full 2 weeks of active training. So depending on what your unit specializes in, you would go and do specialized training related to your unit's operations.
Do you think that the tempo will be upgraded to more training for National Guardsmen after this announcement?
Probably not. I wouldn't think so. There's already a lot of training. So, I mean, when you initially enlist and you go through training, you go through the same basic combat training that any other soldier in the Army would go through. And you do that under federal orders on active duty. That's definitely not broken up into, 1 weekend a month. That's straight through basic, just like anyone else would go. And then you go through AIT or officer training, depending on your path for your specialty and whatever your job is going to be in the Army. So you're already fully trained, and then you just go into a reserve status and do regular drills. The idea of using National Guard for law enforcement supplement, like we're seeing now, that's pretty uncommon, and it generally only happens in emergency situations. But anytime you've got a state governor or municipal, mayor or something that refuses to enforce the laws, and they let federal law enforcement officers come under attack, or federal facilities to come under attack, that certainly qualifies as a reason for the president to mobilize federal assets to go and protect federal troops and federal buildings.
Mm-hmm. Well, Godspeed to those men and women of the National Guard. It's not going to be easy. They'll be taunted, and they will have stuff thrown on them. They will be treated like garbage. So I hope they're ready.
I hope they're ready, and I hope they're given good rules of engagement, because the worst thing that could be done is put them out there and tell them they're not allowed to fire. So you mean they just got to take flack from all these people? They're not allowed to defend themselves? What message does that send? Because then if they realize they can attack and not get counter response,
I don't know what the keep going.
That's not how you're trained. You know, if somebody comes at you, you're supposed to return fire.
Yeah. Well, and these guys are all strapped down there. I don't care who I don't care what anybody says. They've all got weapons. They're some weapon or another, and they're not less lethal particularly. They've got sticks to hit heads they have signs that have nails in them, and they have guns. They have knives, and they've got their fists. So the people covering this are mostly women. So one cold cock from a 200-pound guy and you might die. I mean, it's just terrible. So I hope that they have some idea. I'm looking at this. It doesn't say anything that I can tell about the ROE. I've got this letter going out to the troops that was somehow, intercepted by a reporter. And so I don't know that it has any ROE in it, but I'll keep an eye out for that. Good call on that. Thank you so much, Keith Gross.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. He's such a wonderful person, and a person who's just knowledgeable about a lot of different things. Really appreciate it.